I have no clue what it is.
Well, hello and welcome into this Tuesday's NBA podcast. Stephen, we're going to be discussing, and by the way, my name's Jonathan C. Walsh. I'm the host on the stream tonight. Joining me to the left, Stephen John McLaughlin, with a dashing, I want to say, Japanese script on the t-shirt.
Yes.
Very dashing. He's the co-host on the stream tonight. Stephen, we're going to be discussing James Paul McCartney. And I like to give him his full name, because it is his name. Revealing new details about the Beatles split and the formation of Wings. And Stephen, just the resurgence of Wings' popularity.
Yeah.
A new generation has perhaps found Wings and they're really taking them to the heart. And there's new popularity. And he's discussing that, Stephen, ahead of a double release. Wings, The Story of a Band on the Run, which is a book by a chap whose name eludes me, Edward something Ted, not Bundy. I don't know why that came into my head. It's definitely not Ted Bundy. That'd be fucking weird. And The Man on the Run, which is a documentary coming out next year, 25th of February 2026. That's next year, yes. And Stephen, look, yeah, just thought we'd have a little discussion about it. And just the great man himself. Because I've been listening to some Macca prior to coming on there. I have to tell you, Ram gets a bad rap. I think we've said that before. It's a better album than people give it credit for. One thing about Macca, he's always been a phenomenal melodist. For me, he's the greatest melodic mind to ever walk the earth. I can't think of anybody better than that guy. And it's why when, I know yourself, you kind of get into this mindset as well, Stephen, when he rewrites history to an extent with certain songs, I kind of give him a pass. Because I think a lot of the stuff with the Beatles, they're obviously bouncing off each other, but I think Macca was very hands-on in a lot of the melodic stuff. And I said to you, Stephen, I seen a clip on YouTube just the other day of him testing out and playing on the acoustic guitar. Same session as Mother Nature's Son, that famous clip of him tapping on the floor. He was testing out sort of Helter Skelter. And he had already in his mind got the da-no-no-no-no-no-no. So melodically he had that song framed out very early on. So I give him a buy, because the guy's just a phenomenal melodist. And that's apparent in albums, even like Ram, much sort of dismissed and laughed at album.
There must have been a point during the Beatles period, obviously it's well documented, that after the death of Brian Epstein, John in particular lost sort of sight on what they were doing previously, and I guess that affected them in a way, that there was no manager running the band anymore, and as much as he was still producing some really good quality songs, and in terms of volume and obviously the quality of the writing, after 1967, Paul McCartney sort of re-emerged or reinvented himself into this driven force, and I think a lot of that
Walsh.
probably had to do with Brian Epstein's death. That I'm not saying he saw this opportunity. I think perhaps maybe frightened into it to an extent, to keep the band together and keep that sort of level of quality of writing going, and I think he knew at some point, whether it might have been after India or whatever, that things with him and John were not going to be the same in terms of, writing in the same room. They weren't touring anymore, so they didn't spend as much time in their faces as they used to.
Yeah.
And they were growing up as well, to be fair, but Paul had always had a focus anyway from the very beginning. It's not like he just emerged in 1967, became this prolific songwriter. That was always
George.
There. But Paul, for me, I think he just took the bull by the horns at this point, and thankfully we got the White Album, we got Let It Be, and we got Abbey Road out of that, and this continuation, this is the part that you and I haven't really invested in a lot of time, for whatever reasons, I'm not really sure, because we're big Paul McCartney fans. But
I've listened to a lot of the songs, it's just I've not been as in-depth as, say, Lennon. Just by the nature of the guy, was on Earth a lot shorter of a time than the other three Beatles, of certainly Paul and Ringo. And his output post-Beatles, by obviously a result of that, is that there's less of what Macca's got. And then he took a gap in between to become a father, and obviously went off the rails a bit for about a year in LA.
Yeah.
So even within that shorter period of output, he had even less output than, say, maybe McCartney, who by that point was already well into Wings.
I think he had less output than Ringo, John. You know, at that point, you've got to remember as well, Lennon, obviously, you know, between 1970 and his death in 1980, it was only really 5 years of working as an artist. The other 5 he took off, as you said. So, but Paul's always been in and around. This is one of the things that I think about now, because he's at an age, and I don't want to say it. You know,
about that, yeah.
He's always been in my life. He's always been in your life, you know, and just growing up hearing his solo songs. I was born in the mid-70s, so for me it was Tug of War was a big thing, the album, The Pipes of Peace, the Frog Chorus as well. Yeah. You know, and the stuff he did with Michael Jackson and Stevie Wonder as well was always the stuff that
when the girl's mine,
stood out for me, you know. So
having the balls, Stephen, to release Mull of Kintyre and the rise of punk, and getting it to number one, only fucking Paul McCartney can do stuff like that.
And the irony in that, John, is that Mull of Kintyre's probably only got about 3 or 4 chords, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's like a D punk. And A, and yeah, exactly. It's very simplistic, yeah. But Stephen, you tend to find that people coming through punk and obviously grunge and stuff like that, who were inspired with those kind of things. I think of Weezer a lot. Rivers Cuomo and Brian Bell, I think it is the guitarist. Really brilliant musicians and guitarists, really know their stuff, great technical players, but they obviously simplified it just to get attention in the early albums, and it was really simplistic chords and whatnot they were playing. Obviously Rivers can do mental solos and he's done that, but you tend to find that just to be more accessible, you do simplify it. Obviously with the punk scene that's not the case at all. We know with what they called the Sex Pistols, fucking hopeless on the guitar. Your man that played bass couldn't even play bass, couldn't he not? Am I right in saying that? Was it Sid Vicious? I don't know if he was a bassist or not. I don't know enough about them, but certainly with the early punk scene, they were fucking hopeless, half of them. And they were just rebelling and formulating it into music. But no, Stephen, what you touched upon there with obviously this constant drive and goal with Macca to create and put something out, be it film scores or albums with the Beatles, are off doing maybe alias work. I mean, he's got, what was it, The Fireman or something?
Yeah,
where
The Fireman. Yeah.
Where he puts other stuff out even in his solo career. He's sort of masquerading as another individual. I think that's clear here, Steve, that when they cut ties, and obviously he felt ostracised because of the whole Alan Klein stuff. As he says here, he disclosed he felt completely adrift. Now, we already know that, Stephen, as Beatles fans, we're aware. Like you said before we came on. He went from being this hardcore, driven workaholic, pacing up and down Savile Row and whatnot, pushing the other guys into action, to living in a farm in Scotland with fucking sheep and his dog Martha, not working, and he was depressed. Slightly overweight. Funnily enough, I think he shaved. No, maybe he grew the beard out. I think he shaved initially. But he was depressed. And normally when you think of people being depressed, you think of them being shaggy and unkempt and growing beards out. By the way, I'm not depressed, I have to say. I've got a beard. Just felt like putting that in there. So, John, I mean, that's something that we certainly know. That's not brand new information. But obviously, he says he didn't know how to be in a band as well in the immediate aftermath, and you wouldn't. When you've been in the most successful band of all time.
It's a brave thing to go out and do a solo thing, you know. Even Lennon had the Plastic Ono behind him, although it wasn't a cemented lineup or anything like that. It was just mates, you know. He had to have that backing. George, on the other hand, didn't, you know, because George was always on his own anyway, even within the Beatles, and Ringo was Ringo, you know. He just gone with the flow, you know. But in terms of Paul and John, they always had each other's back up to a point. You know, so I think in terms of doing Ram. He did McCartney, of course, first, and then he did Ram with obviously Linda. I think it was the only time that they released an album, was together, which was a shame because I'm like you, I very much value Ram, which has grown on me over the last couple of years.
I tell you what, Steve, she's got underrated backing vocals as well. She could hit decent notes. Certainly,
Michael Jackson says that. Michael Jackson says Linda McCartney can sing, then Linda McCartney can sing because Michael Jackson said that. So
you can hear it in the back and stuff. She can hit high notes. She's got an impressive vocal range. Much better singer, much more accomplished singer than Yoko Ono. But Yoko never professed to being a singer. In her defence, she was an avant-garde artist who just so happened to tag along with one of the greatest singers of all time. And she had her own style, Stephen. Some would say it was kind of avant-garde in its own way. And who was it that kind of took that style and riffed on it in the early 80s, late 70s? Was it the
B-52s? They were more sort of new wave, weren't they?
Yeah. But it was kind of stuff. They were kind of dabbling with that to an extent.
It's interesting when you listen to Double Fantasy and you listen to our own stuff, Walking on Thin Ice, etc. And how her popularity within the sort of disco scene, in the late 70s, early 80s, was more, a lot of people more connected with her work on Double Fantasy than John Lennon stuff, because his stuff was more sort of traditional.
I know you like it, Stephen.
Yeah, but Linda, for me, was I think she reluctantly joined Wings. I think Paul had to coax her into it. He wanted to be with her, fair enough. It's his wife, and make it a really family affair, John. I'm looking at the sort of past members of Wings as well, because there has been a few sort of lineups, but you look at Denny Lane, it's probably the most
famous outside of Macca.
Obviously from the Moody Blues, and then you look at, there's another Denny Sewell. You've got Henry McCulloch, Jimmy McCulloch, Jeff Britton, Joe English, Steve Hawley, and Lawrence Juber. So there's always stories going about, that Paul's hard to work with, and he's but
he's a perfectionist.
Being honest, Wings is Paul. It's Paul McCartney. It's Paul McCartney. But I think having Denny in there was a good thing, because Denny's got a great voice, a great musician, but it wasn't like Lennon McCartney or anything like that. But it's still
some great songs though, Stephen. Band on the Run's a phenomenal album. Ones sort of individual ones. I was watching Live and Let Die from one of his live performances this week gone there, comparing his voice to what we've seen in 2010. And obviously he's 83, so he's a much older guy now. He was 68 when we seen him. I think he may have even been 67, about to turn 68. And his vocals were far superior back then, but Live and Let Die is a classic song, Steve, and it's also associated with James Bond and whatnot. But that's a song that's just got generational impact. Let Him In's one of my favourite McCartney songs. The first time I heard it was at that live performance we seen him. I was obsessed with it for a long time after that. Just something about that piano work. He loves that sort of down, 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 down. He loves rolling the bass, sort of keys on the piano. Just a great, great tune. Again, that's got lasting impact. Fucking getting used with the postcode lottery over here. And it's obviously linked to a doorbell, a very famous sort of down, 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 down. So it's got lasting legacy. You look at what he's done in his solo output, not just with Wings, and it's hard to argue that, well, for one, that it's not as good as the Beatles, but two, it's still pretty fucking high standard of music that he's putting out, and consistently, Stephen, over multiple decades. I know Harrison in particular hated the fact that he had this incessant urge to be relevant. Now I'd argue Paul McCartney's always relevant, but he used to, I think, cringe on moseying up with the latest act of the day. You touched on it, Michael Jackson in the 80s. Yeah. I'd argue that was absolute fucking glorious output the two put out. There's some brilliant tunes in there, Say, 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 The Girl Was Mine. But also he's worked with Kanye West and Rihanna and other individuals since then. And
he's kept his foot in the door, John, in terms of modern artist as well. Just, I don't think he has to do that. I think most people, regardless of if you like his work or not, I think when it comes, Paul McCartney's a household name. It's almost a brand. But it's always good to see him collaborate. In certain ways. And yeah, I mean, I get what George is saying. And I understand that. But George and Paul were so different in terms of how they saw being famous and musically as well. They were different. George couldn't understand the third person character writing that Paul did. And they, in terms of his output as well, I don't think George was as driven. I think he was never comfortable being famous, and I think Paul excels at being famous. I think as grounded as he is, I think he enjoys the limelight to an extent. Obviously he likes his private life as well, but two different people, two different aims in life. And George has always had this frosty relationship with Paul, regardless. I know they obviously became a lot closer in the last years of George's life, but there was always that tension, whether it be business or personalities clashing. So, no, I mean, I don't really. That's one of the things I like about the Beatles is the four individuals were so different in many ways in terms of their outlook on life, the way they wrote songs, and how they lived their lives as well was totally different. But no, I'm glad Paul is the way he is, because I think when you look at that output between 1970 and to the present, every album that does come out, it's not always going to be a band on the run. No. I think I got New when it came out in 2012, and there was about 3 or 4 cracking songs on that I really liked. But you go back to an album like Band on the Run, and I don't think there's one bad song on it. They're all fantastic. John, I was going to ask you a question in terms of
1985.
Lane.
Yeah.
And he obviously sings the opening lines in Picasso's last words, "Drink to Me." I think voice, John. Would you like to have heard more singing from Denny Lane?
Yeah, I would have, Stephen. I think it would have enriched the band quite a bit more. Obviously, like you said, it's essentially Paul McCartney with friends, and that's fine because he's a big personality. I mean, you take a guy like that who's just one of, let's be honest, a dominant duo in the Beatles, and can't really stretch his and flex his muscles as much because he's got John Lennon. And the other two would step up when required as well, to be fair. And you put him in a band like that where there isn't another personality or someone who's accomplished anywhere near as much as him, he's going to dominate, and that's fair enough. Yeah. But Denny was great, Stephen. I mean, I've seen him fucking playing drums and taking the piss and whatnot in live performances.
Yeah.
Really accomplished musician, brilliant voice. It would have been nice to hear him doing more. I thought he'd done a great job in that song. I like the whole story about that song, period. In fact, was it not an actor? It was over.
Dustin Hoffman, yeah.
Dustin Hoffman basically says, write me a song. And he read the news and it was the passing of Pablo Picasso. And he wrote the song in 5 minutes. Boom, that's you get a song. It's a great song as well.
Yeah, I like it. And
it's obviously just, again, sort of melancholic fucking existential thing where he's talking about drink to me, drink to my health. I know I won't, I know I can't be, I can't fucking blank on the lyrics. I know I can't drink anymore.
Yeah.
So it's just a brilliant little tune. And again, the melody, the bass, 1985 theme is another one where he does that sort of bass rolling thing on the keys on the piano. Yeah. And it's just a great tune. I'm trying to think of all the other, there was one I really enjoyed on Band on the Run.
Band on the Run, Jet. Mrs. Vanderbilt.
That's it. Yeah. I fucking loved that. I was obsessed with that for a good month, just constantly listening to that. That's what I do. I go down rabbit holes.
Let Me Roll It's my favourite, John.
Your favourite?
I love Let Me Roll It. I think that's
Let Me Roll It's great, Stephen. Live. It was phenomenal live. Yeah. I think he played it on a Les Paul. It just sounded glorious. And again, Stephen, you see that talented sort of ability, multi-instrumental ability from Macca. He can play the drums, he can play piano, he can play guitar, he can play bass.
It's funny, John. See when obviously because we're Beatles fans, we know most of the sort of tracks because we've heard the separations and stuff like that. We can identify particular songs. You know, Paul's bass is, I'm not going to say it's unique. I don't think it doesn't stand out, you know, as any other bassist, you know, as far as I'm concerned, but he's prolific. You know, and some of the bass lines are just a tune on their own, but you know, if you gave me the choice between Paul McCartney bass player and identifying a Paul bass line, not Beatles, Paul McCartney, I mean, or you gave me a Paul McCartney guitar solo, I would know what's his right away.
There's something about you, so what? Yeah, I mean, you hear it on Baby. Was it Baby You Can Do It? Was it Taxman? Obviously, the end medley stuff. You hear it to an extent, just the playing on Maybe I'm Amazed. You can tell he was heavily involved in the medley stuff in Abbey Road. He's just got a really distinct way of playing the guitar. It's kind of bendy. It's weird. It's hard to describe it, but he's got a really unique style. That's why I like the end so much, because you fucking get Macca doing his thing. You've got Harrison, more slick, sort of accomplished lead guitar. And then you've got Lennon, it's just fucking raucous, in your face, aggressive. He's just battering it, not giving a shit. So like you said, Stephen, that kind of reflects the different personalities.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, Let Me Roll, it's phenomenal. Stephen, I do think it peaked in terms of the Wings output with Band on the Run. I think that may have been the first one, wasn't it? You done, what was it, something Speedway afterwards. Like I says, I'm not the biggest aficionado of Wings. That's why I'm really looking forward to both the book and the documentary that's coming out, because it'll be a learning experience for me.
Well,
I probably listen to more Harrison than
McCartney came out. McCartney came out, then Ram came out, and then Wings released. I don't know if it was Wings Wildlife in the Red Rose Speedway.
Yeah, because it was 73.
And then
Band on the
Run.
So Band on the Run was the second Wings album then?
Either second or third.
Yeah,
I can't remember.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, I think you peaked with that anyway, for sure. In terms of output, like you said, there's not a bad song in the actual album. It's just really high calibre. I think that, I mean, Stephen, I think that's... I know we like to laugh at sort of Partridge, the quote where he says something along the lines of Wings, the band the Beatles wish they could be. And also that's a joke because it's not reality. Yeah. But I do think Band on the Run is probably getting closest to the standard of a Beatles album.
I think because all the tracks are very strong, John, and memorable. Whereas I'm just looking at the track listing.
It's all the more impressive though, Stephen, when you think that they recorded it in Lagos, didn't they?
And you know, I'm looking at the track listing for this album, Venus and Mars, which came out a few years after Band on the Run. And I only know one song from that, Listen to What the Man Said. It's the only song I know from that. And I probably, we're going down this sort of rabbit hole with Paul McCartney solo stuff and Wings, John. So I think there'll come a time where, you know, we'll probably listen to these albums and do reviews on them.
Yeah.
Same with Lennon stuff, same with Harrison stuff, and same with Ringo stuff. I think that's maybe a good direction to take our sort of reviews. If we're not doing movie reviews, do some album reviews, you know?
Yeah, no, that's a shout. Yeah, that's something, I mean, that actually would be pretty good in terms of listening to stuff I would have no inclination to probably go and listen to. That gave me a reason to go and listen to it. And just, Stephen, like you says, I mean, the guy's been consistent in his output for 30, 40 years now. I mean, even the stuff in the 90s was really high calibre. Some brilliant stuff in there. Calico Skies and stuff like that. He was doing really interesting things throughout his solo career. But Stephen, I'm looking forward to this here. Maybe not that, but this in particular. I think we discussed this. This is coming out in prime. It's a really good time to be a Beatles fan. We've got the Beatles Anthology coming out later this month. Then you've got a couple of months and then we've got Paul McCartney, Man on the Run coming out. And I just hope that it's not just about the sort of formation of Wings, but just where he was. I mean, it will be, it's Man on the Run, we discussed this. It's going to give you an insight on where he was post-Beatles. It's going to go deep into it and just explore the darkness that he obviously experienced and how that shaped him moving forward. Because like I said to Stephen, it was corny as fuck before we came on, but life isn't all sort of ups and ups and ups and happily ever after and roses and sparkling skies and whatnot. That's not the way life works. You've got really, it's like a roller coaster. Ronan Keating was right. I'm not going to sing that again. But it's true, and those dark moments, the bad moments, make you appreciate the good moments even more. And obviously that shaped him and made him the character that we all love.
You know, we always kind of worry when it comes to Paul in terms of whitewashing and stuff like that. And,
yeah.
You know, I get obviously the sort of last episode of the Beatles anthology was a tough one for all three of them. You know, to discuss and really get their facts straight, because I think, you know, in the mid-90s they still had a lot of legal issues that they had to sort out, and they were probably restrictive in what they could really explain. So I'm really hoping in this, although it's only coming from one side, Paul McCartney's corner, you know, I don't think it's going to delve too much into the sort of, you know, ins and outs of the last few days of the Beatles. I think this is going to be, as one door closes, another one opens, and we're going into Paul McCartney, the solo man, but they're still going to have that knock-on effect mentally, physically, you know, and where he's at, and have that knock-on effect, you know, and Linda's sort of importance in this as well. You know, she played a massive part in pulling him together, you know, getting him to focus again, you know, on what he does best. And he kind of alluded to it on the Parkinson show in 1999, I think, where he talked about it. He was hitting the bottle every day, and, you know, Linda pulled him aside and says, "I don't think you want to do this," you know. And yeah, I mean, I think she's going to be quite prominent in this documentary as well, and rightfully so. She was a big part of Paul McCartney's life for 30 years, you know. And you know, it's one of those unique celebrity couples that were so grounded, you know, and she was content being Paul McCartney's wife, and content and obviously being the mother of his children, but she also had, you know, obviously our food range and our animal rights campaigns and stuff like that as well. So she kept herself busy as her own woman, and obviously her photography as well, which she obviously has passed on to Mary now. So it's an interesting.
They're all really successful, aren't they? The kids, when you look at it.
In terms of that family, John, it's a very unique thing, you know, that most of them have kept out the limelight. Stella obviously does her fashion stuff, you know, and Mary's only really became prominent, you know, over the last few years in terms of her photography and her sort of input into that documentary about Abbey Road and stuff like that as a filmmaker. So it's interesting, John, but in terms of Paul and Linda, that's what I want to see from this documentary. I really want to see that relationship. I don't really know too much about it.
No.
I thought it was great when Linda came in on cue in the Get Back documentary. A very pretty lady, you know, and just the way she comes in, you know, and she's just sitting in around there, and yeah, it's going to be interesting, you know. And I really want to see the sort of the Kintyre stuff as well, because I know there's footage out there, John. We've seen clips on YouTube of Macca out in the garden with the kids running about, and Linda sitting.
Stories as well,
kind of jamming.
About them chasing journalists away.
Yeah,
throw buckets of water over them if they don't leave them alone. So no, I mean, Steve, it's funny because when you think of the Beatles and this incredible band, multi-generational, touched the lives of so many people with their musical output, and we've seen so much of them on a professional sort of basis, but when you actually think about it, aside from maybe the Imagine documentary with Lennon, you've not got a huge amount of insight into the actual personal workings of any of them. I mean, I couldn't tell you a thing about what Ringo was like in a personal level and about his sort of family setup. I couldn't tell you about Harrison to an extent.
I think they've all got different reasons though, John.
Lennon
for instance, Rob
was probably the most open.
You know, John was the professional recluse, and I think even more so after John's death. But probably too much of a sore point for Paul for a number of decades as well. Just couldn't think about it, you know, and just it was too much a sore issue. Ringo, on the other hand, you know, Ringo kept himself busy with film as well as, you know, making albums, and his friendship with Peter Sellers and such like, you know. And yeah, I mean, John was John, you know. John lived his life openly, you know. I see you've got the Daily Mail in there, you know, as if he's...
He certainly was open.
You know that.
He was an open book.
You know that line from Ringo in the anthology.
Fucking Daily Mail. I tell you what, I've just picked up on the fact that you had the Daily Mail. Fucking, what are you doing, Lennon? That
I
scumbag
think it was
rag.
different back then, wasn't it? Because they were kind of writing a lot of their stories from that paper as well. Day in the Life, I think, might have came from that. I'm not sure.
Christ,
But no, I mean, I mean, they're all different.
Worry slightly that Get Back had maybe racist undertones.
John, I've watched it back, and Get Back's questionable to me.
Yeah, it's dodgy, because they were kind of taking the piss with the whole Commonwealth stuff, weren't they? And it was your man back in the day, that sort of political guy who was very...
Yeah, Enoch Powell.
Yeah, he was very anti-immigration. I do wonder.
You wonder what's going through their heads, don't you?
Yeah. I doubt they were like
that, to be
fair.
To be fair, I mean, the Beatles in particular, Liverpudlians, have got a wicked sense of humour, John, so you've got to take things with a pinch of salt, I suppose, I don't think Paul McCartney would have allowed that out if it was meaning anything other than what he meant it to be. No, but I mean, it's just a sign of the times. John Lennon was the same. The faces he used to pull as well and stamp his feet. You just can't do that now,
People saying, he was young. He was under a lot of pressure. He was fucking 24. What are you talking about? He was young.
Yeah.
Now, you can get away with that when you're 18 or 17. You're still maturing slightly. I remember when I was 24, man, I wasn't doing shit like that when I was 24. Behave yourself, John. No chance. Now, I find it very funny because I've got a twisted sense of humour. And I openly look for them. I watch Kansas City Hey 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 a lot from Shindig, and he pulled a few in Kansas City Hey Hey.
Paul McCartney tried to justify it on the anthology, though, didn't he? He tried to say that it was just to show that we weren't falling for the game, showbiz and all.
What shit.
I just think it was Lennon all over. He was a cruel bastard. He certainly was.
Oh, but Steve, you can hear it in audio form. I'm a big fan of... I'm blanking on the name. I'm a big fan of it. God almighty, what's it called again? Youngblood. Youngblood. Harrison sings it and Lennon does a vocal.
Yeah.
What is it? Over there. But what shit? I'm not going to do it. I have to stop myself.
Yeah.
But Lennon does, what's your name? But he does it in a certain way where you just know he's pulling a face like that, even though it's audio only. So, yeah, they were all unique individuals, shall we say. Obviously, Stephen, with this, you're right in terms of Macca. And obviously the way that he, I don't know, was maybe a more of a closed book. Harrison was a sort of professional recluse. Lennon was a more open book. Ringo just buggered off to LA in the later years and just lived the high life. Fair play.
Married a Bond girl.
Harrison probably married his wife in the way he was secretly, and then fucking went on to marry 50 million other women. I didn't realise he was such a man-whore. And that's not my words, that's the words of George himself. He would have openly admitted it back then. But Stephen, I think this is a unique opportunity for Paul to tell his side of the story, unabashed, fully open, and reveal what it was like post-Beatles. I think it'll be a really interesting insight into the man, because we know the legend, we know the musician, we know all the brilliant art that he's gave the world. It'll be really interesting to see just how deep this goes. I hope it's not like his songs where he's creating third-party fucking made-up characters and whitewashing a lot of it. I want to see the full innards of what that breakup did to him. Because we get inklings of it in the Get Back stuff. I know they're kind of cutting out of context.
I think people like Uncle Albert was an actual uncle of Paul McCartney's. And he obviously turned them into a sort of caricature of what they were really like. But that's his gift. That's his talent, and certainly wouldn't want to stifle that, regardless of whether you agree with his songwriting style or not. Who the fuck's Eleanor Rigby? I don't care. It's a great song. It's a fucking cracking tune. And it's one of those things.
Who's Rocky Raccoon?
Yeah, exactly. But I'm looking forward to it, John, because for years you had to rely on those sort of Hallmark Channel type TV movies, the Linda McCartney story kind of thing, to get an insight into a live action version of what it was like, or closest what it was like with actors playing Linda and Paul and stuff like that, that period and the hardships. So, this is Paul's opportunity to set the story straight, and like most things, even the Beatles anthology, I take with a pinch of salt, because George Harrison says, it's four individuals telling their different stories about the same event. And I see this as the same thing. It's going to be Paul McCartney's version of his life, and who better to tell a version of his life than the man himself?
Yeah, no, Stephen, I completely agree. And look, I feel for Paul, because he was part of a dynamic duo that changed the world. John tragically was assassinated in 1980, and after that, rightly or wrongly, became this sort of, what would you call it?
Martyr.
Yeah, he was almost a martyr-like figure,
Yeah.
messiah-like figure. Life cut short, and his life took on a different meaning. Fans viewed him in a different light, and Macca almost got the side eye and a lot of the shit as a result of that. So this will be an opportunity for him to show what he's about. And Stephen, like he says, he's getting to that age now where he's not going to be here forever. And his time on Earth is definitely into the final stages. Don't want to fucking wish ill will on him. I hope he's here for another 30 years and lives over 100. But reality is most people don't. So it's important that he gets this version out and lets people see just what he's all about. Because you think of the sort of confident, good-looking guy. He's almost the forefront figure when it comes to live performances. He takes the mic and does a lot of the talking on the stage while the rest are goofing about. You've not really seen that vulnerable side, so I'm looking forward to seeing that. And this book, man, I like to look at this book. I do enjoy a good book. I read the other Macca book and I fucking loved it. When you gave a loan off to me. That's one of the best books I've read.
Yeah.
Really, really good. And I particularly like that quote that he gave to the woman who was kicking out the house. I think Linda was actually coming. And he gave her the heave-ho and told her, it's not you, it's me. And I'll not say the next word.
See you next Tuesday.
Exactly. See you next Tuesday. Tuesday, absolutely, yes. But of course, he doesn't swear. Paul. The fucking clowns. Clowns on that group, I'm telling you. But no, Steve, look, there's not, like I said, a huge amount of details been revealed that we don't really know about. I mean, I'm looking here and I'm not seeing anything. I put new details, question mark. I deliberately put the question mark there on the thumbnail because I'm not sure what the new details are. The times with Wings were exciting because we built up to it and eventually we hit the big time. There was a particular kind of excitement in achieving that goal. After the Beatles, I didn't really know how to be in a band. It was a complete blank canvas. We'd go on the road with no plans, no hotels booked, no gigs lined up, and we thought the only place we might find a captive audience was at university. That is quite interesting. I've not really heard that before. Where he's basically back to basics. And the only example I can find of that in modern terms is Dave Grohl with the Foo Fighters. He was part of Nirvana, huge act, grunge, took over the world, slapped glamour rock back into its place. Absolute storm, almost akin to Beatlemania, but in the 90s and much smaller. Then Kurt, obviously, we know what happened with him. And Dave had to step out on his own 2 feet and form a new band. It started off with himself and a sort of a demo. And they had to go back and they were gigging tiny little fucking clubs in Italy and things like that, and they built it up. One of my favourite performances, one of my favourite songs is Aurora. And he's playing it in a fucking ballroom in, where was it, Atlanta. So that's, I kind of have seen that story with other people, but I wasn't aware that Macca had to go right back to basics and work at smaller venues. So that is
there is all these, John. Was it Peter Green from the original lineup with Fleetwood Mac as well? It's that reinvention that you've got to. It's a hard thing to do if you're sort of pigeonholed into sort of a viewpoint from outsiders, and how they see you and how they expect you to be, But Paul, I know about the university gigs as well, John. I knew about that years ago, but it'll be interesting to see all this how it unfolds, And Paul McCartney, regardless of how he was going to do it, was going to be popular because he's one of the Beatles, but. As a human being, there must have been doubt in his head. I mean, there must have been, because I think he did start to believe the press. He started to believe what John Lennon was saying about him, about all you've ever done is yesterday and stuff like that. You know, and I think that did affect him, you know, mentally, and affected his confidence a great deal. So it'll be interesting to see him delve. I'm hoping he delves into this. I hope it's not a whitewash, John. I hope it's not surface level.
I don't think it will be.
I really want him to express how he was feeling, and I really don't want him to suffer and relive the whole thing. But
no,
it's for us to understand, you know, John, because I think this is his opportunity. You know, I don't think he's going to get another opportunity to do this. So I'm looking forward to this. February, isn't it? The end of February.
5th of February comes out, Stephen, 2 days after your birthday, yeah. So
my 50th.
Yeah, 50th. Oh, fucking hell, it's scary, isn't it? That is crazy, man. That's fucking mental.
I'm almost the same age as Paul McCartney was when he did the anthology.
Crazy.
But I can't get the mullet.
I mean, fuck me, Stephen. How long have I known you now? That's 25 years.
Yeah, half my life.
25 years. You were 25. You were fucking 11 years younger than I am just now. That's mind-blowing. That's fucking mind-blowing. It worries me when I hear things like that. And I see how quickly time's passing. It worries me tremendously when I see how quickly time passes. Fucking hell. But no, Stephen, look, it's a unique opportunity for the guy to tell his story, like you said, and it can maybe change a lot of people who maybe are not a huge fan of Paul. I don't know many people who aren't. There are people there, certainly people I know. I've had many arguments on holiday. Absolutely fucking steaming. Nearly getting crying and all of that, getting emotional on the vodka and the whiskey about how Paul's this great man, he's a great singer. Sick and tired of people talking about John like he's the dog's box. He is a dog's box, but Paul's every bit as important. Guy deserves his fucking
bollock.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a unique opportunity for him to tell his story and maybe show other and different, fucking me as well, what was going on and how it shaped him. And Stephen, it's an important story to tell to people who are maybe going through darkness in their lives as well, or a bad point. Look, it's human. We're all on the same journey. Well, some of us are on fucking different journeys, so let's get real here. I'm not Paul McCartney. But we experience similar things, moments. And coming out of that darkness, there's always new opportunities for you. And with Paul, it was wings and a solo career and sold out stadiums and worked with Michael Jackson and Stevie Wonder and other individuals. So if he can do it, you can do it. That's what I'm trying to say here, guys. Read his fucking book. Watch the documentary. I know I will be. I've not got much more to say, Stephen. That's 52 minutes. That's pretty impressive. And we managed to chat the hind legs off of that there. And just proves, like I said, I love the fucking sound of my own voice. Just talking about that today. What is your thoughts, though, on Paul McCharmley? That's not my words, but the words of John Lennon from Shindig, I think, way back in the mid-60s, early 60s. Yeah, that was when Paul and the gang were throwing little pieces of paper at him. And the guy was asking him, what's your literary inspiration? And he says, nobody. And I think Macca says, Betty Grable and something else. And he repeated it. Then he opened the book up. It was a comedic fucking force of nature. But anyway, he called him Paul McCharmley. What's your thoughts on Paul McCharmley? And I'm revealing new details about life post-L'Hôpital, about wings entering into a new era of popularity. People coming up to him. I don't think many people go up to Paul McCartney. I think he's talking fucking shite there and telling them their favourite song, the first song they heard of his was Jet, a band on the run. Liar, but we'll not go there. Share your thoughts down below about the documentary, but anything, liar. He's a fucking liar. I tell you, no chance. No chance. I haven't said that, Stephen. The first time I heard Helter Skelter in a car, I thought it was fucking Meatloaf. So who am I to talk? I was a fucking cretin back in the day. And some may argue, I still am a fucking cretin. Share your thoughts down below about that, about anything we've discussed in the comments section. Like the video if you've enjoyed it, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon to get notifications of future content like this on the YouTube. To quote another YouTuber who I like to take a piss out of, he's an older gentleman, and he's not up with the lingo of the kids, the YouTube. Same thing over on Twitch, follow button, notifications button over there. Until the next time though, all that's left to be said is thank you for watching us, and bye-bye.